Rich Cohen's book, The Fish That Ate the Whale, The Life and Times of America's Banana King. It's a really interesting biography on Sam Zemurray, an immigrant to the U.S. who ended up dominating the banana business in the early 1900s, so much so that this man shaped the political landscape of Central American countries from the 1920s until his death in 1961. There's a lot of lessons you can learn from this book, such as how to run a business and all the ins and outs of the banana trade, but I'm focusing on 3 that stood out to me due to their relevance in what's going on in the world today. If you buy a man, you have the right to expect him to stay bought. What does this mean? The buying here is referring to bribes, kickbacks, and other forms of corruption to get some type of unfair advantage. In the book, Sam starts a very successful business called Cuyamel Fruit that grows, harvests, and ships bananas from Honduras to the U.S. The banana trade is only about 20 years old at the time, and there are just a few big players in the market, a market that is dominated by the Boston-based United Fruit Company. Honduras gained independence from Spain in 1821, which was followed by decades of instability and chaos, paving the way for corrupt government officials that were more than happy to enrich themselves or use their power to advance their own interest. This was a golden opportunity for American banana tycoons like Sam, who saw the country's lack of laws and standards as a green light to take advantage of cheap labor, land, and favorable kickbacks. For Sam, buying off officials meant exemptions from export taxes and import duties, permission to clear vast amounts of jungle for his plantations, and build private railroads, ports, and bridges. His argument was that he can't afford any additional overhead costs without it resulting in higher banana prices for the consumer. So essentially, he wouldn't be able to even be in business if any of the laws that applied in the U.S. applied in Honduras, because the costs would just be too high. This behavior and mentality is still alive and well today. There are many foreign corporations that have a disproportionately large presence in some of the most natural resource-rich but unstable and relatively poor countries, such as Congo, Iraq, and even Ukraine. For the people running these mega companies, it's just business as usual. So basically, Sam expects the officials that he bought off to uphold their part of the agreement, and if anything were to change, you can naturally expect him and any businessman in the matter to take action. And that action can even be to overthrow the government and replace it with the one that continues to cooperate. That's what Sam did. He financed and staged a coup that overthrew the Davila government and replaced it with a formerly deposed Honduran president named Manuel Bonilla. Because if you buy a man, you expect him to stay bought. Number 2, you could not see these connections until you could. Then you could not stop seeing them. The revolving door between U.S. corporations and the U.S. government. So this shouldn't come as much of a surprise today. But this relationship between U.S. corporations and U.S. government goes way back. In 1933, Sam took control of the United Fruit Company through a forced merger with his company, Cuyamel Fruit. The company was massive and operated in numerous countries across Central and Latin America as a monopoly without any serious competition. In Guatemala, United Fruit was not only the largest landowner, but owned much of the country's critical infrastructure, including railroads, ports, communication channels, schools, and hospitals. It was the largest company there and controlled one of its main exports, which were bananas. So in 1951, Jacobo Arbenz Guzman became president of Guatemala through democratically held elections, with the promise of improving the quality of life for local Guatemalans. This translated to land reforms and labor rights, such as a 40-hour work week. One of those land reforms was to expropriate uncultivated lands and redistribute it to local Guatemalans. The problem was that United Fruit owned thousands of acres of these uncultivated lands. The Arbenz government offered payment for the land based on United Fruit's own tax filings, which were intentionally depreciated when Sam took over. But United Fruit argued that the land was worth significantly more, $16 million more, and wanted that full payment. A formal complaint was made with the backing of the U.S. government, which claimed that undervaluing assets for tax purposes was the standard procedure in Guatemala and accepted by previous governments. However, Arbenz Guzman did not budge and declined to participate in business as usual. This act of defiance put Guatemala on the map as a resistance symbol and attracted other Latin American revolutionaries to the country, including the Argentine Che Guevara, who viewed the U.S. government and global companies as a tag team that worked together with ultimately the same interests. This was a problem, and a bigger intervention was needed compared to Honduras with Cuyamel Fruit. So Sam started hiring the elites of American society with close ties to the U.S. government. Some of those hires included Thomas Corcoran, a lawyer who helped create the Securities and Exchange Commission and was a former advisor under President Roosevelt. In turn, Corcoran recommended Sam to hire Walter Bedell Smith, a former CIA head under President Truman, who then recommended someone else, and the cycle continued from United Fruit to the U.S. government and back again, because you could not see these connections until you could. Then you cannot stop seeing them. Another one of Sam's hires was Edward Bernays, the man credited for being the founder of modern-day public relations, but what he really was effective in was propaganda and the manipulation of the masses. And that's what he delivered. He masterminded an effective propaganda campaign that made it seem as though Guatemala was soon to become another communist state during the time when emotions ran high with the Red Scare of the Cold War. So this resulted in United Fruit working together with the CIA to overthrow Arbenz Guzman, who was democratically elected by the people, and replaced him with Castillo Armas, who agreed to the terms negotiated by the U.S. government. Guatemala basically became a police state, and all the social reforms that Arbenz Guzman tried to put forth were repealed. Eventually, the public found out, and this caused a lot of resentment in Latin America towards the U.S. To save face, the U.S. eventually tried United Fruit under antitrust laws for running a monopoly. Today, United Fruit no longer exists, but its offspring include Chiquita Banana. And this leads me to the last interesting point from this book. Giving with display is not giving, it's trading. Sam was very charitable in his later years, but it wasn't easy to track all of his philanthropic endeavors, since many times he would donate anonymously under the philosophy that philanthropy that does not degrade is done so quietly, not even the rescued learns the name of his rescuer. Philanthropy has become a very popular topic in the last few decades. The definition of philanthropy, in its most classic sense, translates to the love of humankind. The true essence of love is that it's unconditional, meaning that the person giving it isn't expecting anything in return. Today, philanthropy is a huge industry. People are celebrated who pledge millions or even billions publicly to support their chosen causes, or alternatively, they roll the money into their own nonprofits tax-free. You can argue that a lot of this public giving comes with strings attached, either through the form of buying influence, prestige, power, or as a means to explore future business opportunities, which means that giving with display is not giving, it's trading. So let me know what you think. Have you read the book? If you did, what did you get out of it?